Katrina battered and then submerged New Orleans. The insurance companies call them acts of God, and people living in the Bronze Age probably wouldn't have argued with that assessment.
When you read the Bible, you see their observations of a natural phenomenon as this mysticism, as this fantastic power of God.
Natural disasters have always destroyed cities. We're seeing that very well in today's world, whether it's a tsunami or it's an earthquake or it's an overflowing river and a torrent of mud. Yes, natural disasters destroy cities. And of course that could have crept into the biblical narrative.
But of all the different kinds of natural disasters, one seems especially suited to have caused the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. When you think about a rain of fire, it's easy to imagine a volcano.
Over and over again, we see the power of volcanoes being associated with the power of God. Sodom and Gomorrah is a perfect example of volcanic eruption in the Bible.
Many of the phenomena associated with volcanic eruptions seem to appear in the biblical account.
We have the earth shaking, we have the pillars of fire, ash falling, stones falling, pyroclastic flows, consuming bodies, and of course, sinners being punished by God for their sins.
Unfortunately, there isn't much evidence for erupting volcanoes near the Dead Sea in biblical times, but there's plenty of proof that another kind of geological upheaval was wreaking havoc in the area back then. A force that may account for the famous destruction of another city, not too far from the Dead Sea. The city was Jericho. According to the Bible, an Israelite leader named Joshua conquered Jericho after its walls somehow, mysteriously, crumbled. And if you're looking for a natural explanation, you don't have to look very far. Because Jericho, it turns out, was built on an earthquake fault line.
There are actually quite a number of faults on either side of Jericho. Virtually every century, you had one or two earthquakes, and some centuries even as many as 6.
But it's an exceedingly unhealthy place to build a city, or a little bit like San Francisco.
If there's a Guinness Book of Records for cities, Jericho probably deserves the first entry.
Jericho is the oldest known continuously inhabited city in the world. It's been inhabited for 10,000 years. It's still inhabited.
Now the sprawling mound where all of Jericho's previous incarnations are buried lies under a cable car ride, a prime attraction for tourists visiting the Holy Land.
It's, going to be ruin upon ruin, inexplicable ruin upon top of another inexplicable ruin for the population living there. So of course you're going to get stories growing up as to why that wall has tumbled down, why that wall has fallen.
Hidden within the mound are the ruins of City 4, which may date from Joshua's time, give or take an important few hundred years. And many of the walls show signs of having been struck by an earthquake, which may or may not square with the biblical account of how the city fell. The Bible story begins with Joshua's army gathered on the far side of the Jordan River, another group of herdsmen mistrustful of city dwellers.
Here is Joshua on the east side with his nomadic tribes, and he is waiting for a way in which he could bring his animals across the Jordan River. And this is not that easy. Well, lo and behold, suddenly there's an earthquake.
What happens next is eerily reminiscent of the story of Moses' escape from Egypt. An inexplicable parting of the waters that allows Joshua and his army to cross on a dry riverbed. But this miracle may have a natural explanation.
In the region called Damia, when we get these earthquakes, we get huge avalanches that flow across and actually block the flow of the river for a day or two. The downstream, the river actually runs dry. In fact, Dameus, that province, is the province after which we derive the word Dan.
Did a military opportunity simply present itself to Joshua and his men? It's possible. Because the Bible places the attack just after the spring harvest, which is exactly the wrong time for anyone planning a siege.
If you're going to attack a city, you want to surround it and starve the people off. You don't attack a city when the crops have just been harvested and the city is full of food and there's no crops in the field for you to harvest for your army.
What happens to Jericho next sounds like a miracle.
We read in Joshua chapter 6 that the Israelites walked around the city for 6 days, and on the seventh day blew the trumpets. The people shouted, and the Bible says the walls fell down, and the Israelites stormed the city.
Even the sound of trumpets can be explained.
An earthquake almost always, just before it hits, is characterized by a roar. Very many people describe it from small earthquakes, for instance, like a fireplace roaring. Others say, no, it was more like a jet plane that came by, or thunder that is heard in the distance.
So Jericho was leveled, and the Bible says that one of the walls fell down flat, so the invaders could go up into the city. That description may square with some of the archaeological finds, like the collapsed city walls at the base of the town.
These were very large, thick, mud brick walls, but one of the walls actually did, at the time of the destruction of Jericho's city, fall outwards. And this is exactly what we see archaeologically. It formed a natural ramp up into the city where people could have walked up a rather smooth incline right into the city with almost no resistance.
The Bible tells us the Israelites sacked and burned the city, but it wasn't looted. That seems to fit with the discovery of wheat and barley buried in City 4's ashes.
Jars full of grain, not half full or quarter full, full of grain. Clearly, the harvest had just been taken in agreement with the Bible. Well, why was it left there at Jericho to be burned in the fire?
Again, the Bible offers an explanation.
The grain was not to be taken by the people seizing the city, that it was to be left there or burned or sacrificed to God by burning, but it was not to be taken.
Most archaeologists agree that Jericho was destroyed at least once in biblical times, but the dates don't seem to correspond with Joshua's conquest.
Now there is a big destruction, a violent destruction by fire of the city of Jericho, which most archaeologists would date between around 1500 and 1475, and they would attribute it to the Egyptians.
It's like trying to put